The Littyverse city hums against the glass, a constant, rhythmic pulse of neon light bleeding into the room. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of old paper and ozone. Every wall is a labyrinth of star charts, hand-drawn maps, and sketches that defy geometry. They are pinned in overlapping layers, creating a dense, paper-walled cage. Litty lies motionless on his bed. He stares at the ceiling, his gaze tracing the jagged lines of a constellation he drew 3 nights ago. The room is silent, save for the low-frequency vibration of the city outside. He shifts his weight, the mattress springs creaking in the stillness. He reaches out, his fingers brushing against a stack of parchment, then pulls his hand back, gripping the edge of the bed frame. He is waiting for something, though he does not know what. The charts seem to shift in the low light, the ink lines appearing to pulse in sync. He sits up, his feet touching the cold floor, and scans the room one last time. He closes his eyes, listening to the rhythm, waiting for the silence to break. The silence breaks with a sharp, metallic click from his wrist. Litty looks down. The LTK coin is no longer dormant. It begins to flicker, a faint amber pulse that rhythmically beats against his skin. He tries to pull his arm away, but the light accelerates. It shifts from a steady glow to a blinding, erratic strobe that fills the room with harsh, golden shadows. The pulse climbs his forearm, burning with a sudden, intense heat. He gasps, his eyes darting beneath his lids as he tries to stand, but his muscles lock. The light expands, wrapping his chest in a rigid, golden cage of crackling energy. He reaches out to steady himself against the wall, but his fingers pass through the air as if the room itself is losing substance. A silent shockwave rips through the space. The star charts on the walls tear away, fluttering like dying birds. The bed frame rattles against the floorboards, the wood groaning under the pressure of the expanding field. Litty's breath hitches, his mouth opening in a silent cry as the energy pulls him taut. The air in the room turns heavy, ionized, and sharp. In a single, violent blink, the golden light consumes the entire frame. The furniture slams back into place. The room is empty. The coin remains on the pillow for a heartbeat, then vanishes into thin air. Litty is no longer in the room. He is falling, but there is no floor, no gravity, only the sensation of being stretched across an infinite distance. He tumbles through a tunnel of light that defies physics. Electric blue streaks collide with violet ribbons, blurring into lines that vibrate with a low, bone-shaking hum. The speed is absolute. He tries to scream, but the air is stripped from his lungs by the sheer pressure of the void. He tucks his arms against his sides, fighting the G-force that threatens to rip his limbs from their sockets. His vision pulses in time with the tunnel walls, expanding and contracting like a living throat. He feels the weight of dimensions pressing against his skin, a crushing, icy cold that bites through his senses. He pivots his body, forcing his muscles to lock into a diver's stance, fighting the chaotic turbulence of the vortex. The violet light intensifies, turning into a blinding, solid wall of color. He sees the tunnel narrowing ahead, the lines of light converging into a single, piercing point of white. He braces his core, clenching his teeth as the pressure peaks. The tunnel begins to scream, a high-pitched whine. He prepares for the impact as the light swallows him whole. The impact is brutal. Litty hits the ground with a heavy thud that knocks the wind from his chest. He rolls, limbs flailing, through a thick carpet of crimson leaves that dampen the sound of his arrival. He comes to a stop against a gnarled, pulsing root. He lies still for a moment, his lungs burning as he drags in air. He pushes himself up, his palms pressing into soil that feels unnaturally warm. He looks up. 2 suns hang in a violet sky, casting long amber shafts of light through a canopy of towering, alien growth. He blinks, trying to focus his vision. The trees around him are massive, their roots glowing with a faint, rhythmic blue light that pulses in sync with his own heartbeat. He scrambles to his feet, his balance wavering as he takes in the scale of the forest. These are not the trees of his city. He reaches for his wrist, finding the coin still there. But the world around him is silent, vast, and entirely unknown. He is no longer on Earth. Litty shakes the dizziness from his head, forcing his focus back to the immediate environment. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a worn notebook, the pages already filled with sketches from his own world. He needs a baseline. He crouches low, pressing his palm against the soil. It sparkles with a faint, bioluminescent life, shifting under his touch like fine sand. He watches the light patterns, noting how they react to his presence. He sketches the movement, his pencil moving in sharp, precise strokes. Suddenly, the ground beneath his left boot gives way, sliding into a hidden depression. He shifts his weight instantly, planting his back foot to regain his balance before the soil can pull him down. He doesn't panic. He observes the sinkhole, marks its location on his map, and adjusts his trajectory. He moves with a calculated rhythm, stepping only where the roots provide solid footing. He finds a clear path forward and moves into the deeper shadows. The thrumming sound intensifies, vibrating through the soles of his feet and settling deep in his chest. It is no longer a distant echo, but a steady, pulsing beat that seems to dictate the rhythm of the entire forest. Litty moves with deliberate silence, keeping his body low as the undergrowth thickens. He pushes through a dense curtain of oversized, waxy leaves. The foliage gives way, and he finds himself perched on a high ridge, overlooking a massive, hollowed-out tree structure. It is a village, suspended high above the forest floor, connected by intricate bridges of woven vines. Below, a group of people moves with purpose, their skin marked with glowing patterns. At the center of the clearing, a fire burns with a flickering, unnatural intensity. Sorai holds a staff aloft, and the stone embedded at its peak pulses with the exact same amber frequency as the coin on Litty's wrist. He remains motionless in the shadows, his breath shallow, his eyes wide as he registers the connection. Litty leans forward, his fingers gripping the rough bark of the ridge. He needs to see the stone on the staff more clearly. He shifts his weight, aiming for a better angle, but the wood beneath his boot is brittle. A sharp, dry crack echoes through the clearing. He freezes, his heart hammering against his ribs. Below, the rhythmic chanting stops instantly. The firelight seems to dim. Litty tries to pivot, to slide back into the safety of the dense canopy, but the movement is too slow. Before he can take a second step, shadows detach themselves from the trees around him. They move with predatory speed, closing the distance in a blur of motion. He is surrounded. A circle of warriors emerges from the foliage, their faces stern and unreadable. They move in perfect synchronization, their spears leveled. The cold metal tips press against his throat, biting into his skin. He stops breathing, his muscles locked in place. He is caught in the open, his hands raised instinctively, his gaze darting from one warrior to the next. He is the prey. The pressure of the spear tips against his skin remains constant, a cold reminder of his vulnerability. Litty keeps his hands raised, fingers splayed, refusing to look away from the warriors. The silence in the clearing is absolute, broken only by the crackle of the central fire. Then, the circle of warriors shifts. A path opens, and Sorai steps forward. Her gaze is sharp, scanning him with an intensity that feels like a physical weight. She stops inches from him, her eyes dropping to his wrist. The coin, which had been dormant, suddenly flares with a brilliant, blinding amber light. Sorai gasps, her hand trembling as she reaches out to touch the metal surface. As her fingers make contact, a golden pulse ripples outward from the point of connection. It washes over the warriors, a warm, humming wave of energy that forces them to recoil. One by one, they lower their spears, the tension in their shoulders dissolving into visible awe. Sorai steps back, her eyes wide, reflecting the golden glow. She looks at the warriors, then back to Litty, her voice ringing out with absolute authority. She speaks a single word, chosen. The word hangs in the air, and the entire village drops to their knees in unison. The threat is gone, replaced by a sudden, heavy weight of expectation. Sora gestures for him to follow, moving toward a cluster of monoliths standing at the edge of the village. These stones are weathered, covered in moss, and deep, deliberate grooves. She traces a line across the surface, and Litty steps closer to inspect the work. The carvings depict a swirling, shadow-like entity, a parasitic force that coils around the planet like a vine, choking the life from the roots and the soil. He runs his fingers over the jagged indentations, feeling the cold, rough texture of the history beneath his skin. The patterns are intricate, showing the energy being siphoned away into a dark, central void. Litty follows the narrative arc of the stone, his eyes widening as he identifies the mechanical precision of the drain. He moves to the final, tallest slab. It is cleaner than the others, less worn by time. At the center of the relief, a figure stands tall, hair wild and unkempt, a distinct mark glowing on his wrist. It is a perfect likeness. Litty pulls back, his own wrist pulsing in rhythm with the stone. He looks at his arm, then back at the carving. The resemblance is undeniable. The silence of the forest feels heavy now, pressing in on him as the reality of his presence here shifts from accidental to inevitable. He is not just a visitor, he is the catalyst. The clearing becomes a blur of motion. Vale moves with a serpentine grace, his strikes landing with the precision of a falling leaf. Doro follows, his movements explosive and rhythmic. Litty steps into the center, his posture rigid, his movements still tethered to the world he left behind. He lunges, but Vale sidesteps, a flick of his wrist sending Litty stumbling into the dirt. He pushes up, breath ragged, and resets his feet. Again, he tries to mirror their fluid, circular footwork, but his weight is wrong. He is too heavy, too deliberate. He closes his eyes for a heartbeat, feeling the pulse of the coin on his wrist, and stops trying to mimic them. Instead, he begins to weave his own instincts into their patterns. He pivots on his heel, using the momentum of his own weight to drive a strike that catches Doro off guard. The rhythm shifts. It is no longer a lesson, it is a synthesis. He feels the tension in his muscles transform into a coiled, ready energy. He learns to read the air, to anticipate the shift in the wind before a blow lands. By the time the suns begin to dip, his movements have lost their hesitation. He stands in the center of the clearing, chest heaving, his gaze locked on the horizon. He is no longer just a traveler. He is a weapon. Dawn breaks, but the light does not reach the forest floor. The tribe gathers in silence, their movements stripped of the previous day's training intensity. Soraya hands the staff to Litty, the stone at its peak vibrating with a low, steady hum. They move as one, a silent phalanx cutting through the dense undergrowth. As they push further toward the mountain, the vibrant colors of the jungle begin to leach away. The glowing blue roots turn brittle and black, snapping like glass under their feet. The air grows thin, carrying the metallic tang of ozone and decay. Litty leads the pack, his eyes fixed on the looming peak that pierces the clouds like a jagged tooth. The warmth of the two suns vanishes, replaced by a biting, unnatural chill that clings to the skin. Every step forward feels like walking into a vacuum. The warriors around him tighten their grips on their spears, their faces set in grim lines. They reach the mountain base, a massive sheer wall of stone that seems to absorb the remaining light. Litty stops. He looks up at the towering, lifeless rock and signals the tribe to halt. The final climb is ahead. Litty places his boot on the first step. The stone is slick, with a frost that does not melt. He raises the staff, and the golden light flares, biting into the oppressive gray haze that blankets the mountain. The tribe follows in a single file, their breathing ragged and shallow in the thinning air. With every meter gained, the darkness seems to thicken, pressing against the perimeter of their light like a living tide. Litty feels the staff pulse in his grip, a rhythmic thrum that matches the beat of his own heart. He pushes forward, his muscles straining against the unnatural gravity of the slope. The path is narrow, carved into the sheer face of the mountain, and the drop into the abyss is hidden by the swirling gloom. He stops for a moment, his lungs burning, and drives the butt of the staff into the stone. The light expands, revealing a jagged, ancient staircase that spirals upward into the clouds. A shadow flickers at the edge of his vision, darting between the pillars of rock, but he does not look back. He focuses on the golden glow, using it as a beacon to anchor his resolve. The air grows colder, turning his breath into thick, white plumes that vanish instantly. He signals the tribe to keep the formation tight. They move upward, a small, defiant spark of gold ascending into the heart of the mountain shadow, leaving the world below to the encroaching silence. Litty pushes the heavy stone slab aside, revealing a vast, cathedral-like chamber carved deep into the mountain's core. The air here is stagnant, tasting of dry dust and ancient rot. In the center, suspended by veins of black, pulsating stone, a massive crystal hangs. It emits a sickly, rhythmic strobe of pale green light that seems to drain the very oxygen from the room. Litty steps onto the floor, his boots crunching on layers of gray ash. Scattered around the base of the crystal are dozens of figures. They stand perfectly still, their bodies rigid, their movements entirely absent. These are the hollow shells of the fallen. As the golden light from Litty's staff washes over them, the husks twitch. Their heads snap toward the light in unison. Litty watches them, his grip tightening on the staff. The crystal pulses faster, the green light bleeding into the shadows. He calculates the distance, his eyes darting from the crystal to the encroaching shells. He plants his feet, ready to strike. Litty lunges. He cuts a path through the center of the room, his boots sliding across the ash-covered stone. The husks reach out, their fingers stiff and claw-like, but he pivots, using the staff to deflect their mechanical swings. The air grows heavy, thick with a sudden, freezing pressure that pulls at his lungs. He reaches the base of the crystal, where the floor is etched with deep, jagged fissures. He raises the staff high, but the shadows coil around it, a viscous, ink-like substance that fights his descent. The parasitic energy screams a high-pitched, discordant vibration. Litty grunts, his muscles corded with effort, and he drives his shoulder into the staff. He forces the tip downward, fighting the resistance of the floor itself. The stone beneath the crystal begins to glow with a fierce, blinding gold. He screams, a raw sound of defiance, and slams the staff into the deepest crack. The chamber explodes. The collision of energies creates a vacuum that pulls the very air from the room. Litty holds the staff, locked in the floor, his knuckles white, his feet braced against the violent tremors shaking the foundation. Above him, the massive crystal begins to spiderweb with fissures. Each crack emits a sound like shattering glass, magnified 1,000 times. The green light leaks from these fractures, flickering erratically. As the golden energy from the staff forces its way inside, the chamber walls groan, dust and stone shards raining down from the ceiling. Litty keeps his eyes fixed on the core, watching as the crystal begins to lose its structural integrity. It pulses one last time, a desperate, dying flare of sickly light before the center gives way. With a deafening roar, the crystal implodes. A shockwave of pure, kinetic force rips outward, slamming into the walls and throwing debris across the room. The crystal disintegrates into a cloud of fine, shimmering dust that fills the air. The oppressive weight that had choked the chamber vanishes instantly. Litty is thrown backward by the force of the collapse. Silence rushes back. Litty pushes himself up from the stone, his breath ragged. Across the chamber, the hollow shells remain motionless, their limbs locked in the positions they held when the crystal shattered. He watches, waiting. A second passes. Then, a sharp intake of air echoes through the cavern. One of the tribe members blinks, the dull gray film over their eyes receding, to reveal a warm, human brown. The skin markings on their arms begin to pulse, faint at first, then glowing with a soft, steady blue. One by one, the others follow. They drop their rigid postures, shoulders slumping as the parasitic control evaporates. A low hum starts in the floor, rising through the soles of Litty's feet. The bioluminescent roots in the walls ignite, casting a vibrant, pulsing light across the cathedral-like space. The tribe members look at their hands, then at each other, their faces breaking into expressions of sudden, overwhelming relief. A shout goes up from the front ranks, raw and jubilant. It is quickly joined by others, a chorus of voices rising into a rhythmic chant that vibrates against the stone ceiling. The celebration continues behind them, but Litty walks toward the forest edge where the air is still. Sorai waits beneath a tree with glowing roots, her staff held loosely in her grip. She points to the stone embedded in the wood, then to the coin still fixed to Litty's wrist. "These are not separate tools," she says. "They are two halves of a single anchor, pulling threads across the void." As she speaks, a sharp, prickling heat flares along Litty's forearm. He pulls back his sleeve. Beneath the skin, thin lines of light begin to map themselves out, tracing geometric patterns. The lines glow with the same intensity as the bioluminescent roots. Litty watches as the ink-like light settles into his flesh. He reaches out with his other hand, his fingertips tracing the raised, glowing ridges of the markings. They pulse in sync with his own heartbeat. He looks at Sorai, who nods once. He flexes his fingers, feeling the strange electric weight of the new power. The air between them begins to ripple, distorting the view of the glowing forest behind Sorai. A low, harmonic hum builds, vibrating the ground beneath Litty's feet. He unclips the staff from his grip, the stone at his peak dimming as he hands it back to the elder. Sorai takes it, her fingers brushing against his, and she steps back, giving him space. The ripple in the air widens, tearing open a jagged, luminous rift that spills blinding white light into the dim forest clearing. Litty turns to face the village. The tribe has gathered at the perimeter, their faces illuminated by the portal's growing intensity. No one speaks. He offers a single, sharp nod, his eyes locking with theirs for a final second. The energy from the rift pulls at his hair and tugs at his clothes, creating a localized wind that scatters crimson leaves across the soil. He steps forward, his body dissolving into the white light as the rift snaps shut behind him, leaving the forest in sudden, absolute silence. The morning sun cuts across the room, hitting the floorboards where his feet touch down. Litty sits on the edge of his bed, the familiar scent of the city drifting through the window. He pulls up his sleeve. The geometric markings are still there, faint but glowing, with a steady, rhythmic pulse against his skin. He reaches for the notebook on his nightstand, the pages worn from his travels. He clicks his pen, the sound sharp in the quiet room. On a fresh, blank page, he writes, "Planet 1, complete. Planet 2, unknown." He closes the book with a firm snap. The weight of the mission is gone, but the energy in his arm remains, a constant reminder of the world's waiting in the dark. He stands, walks to the window, and looks out at the horizon. The city hums, but he is already looking past it, toward the next coordinate. He picks up his bag and moves toward the door, ready for the next horizon.